my best friend, Anthony Darnell, doesn't have any freight, but he does. Doesn't have any freight. Yeah, he does. It's out there, people. Listen, if you work for TQL,
you're on mute. You're on mute. You can't even tell us about all the freight you have.
Welcome to AAA1 Hold My Beer.
Welcome.
Alphabetically first.
Yeah. So if you work for TQL, Landstar, or say like I don't know, any of the big brokerages or whatever, just reach out to Tony. Guy's a nice guy. He's got freight. You know, get in there and he'll give you a chance. He usually gives everybody a shot. What's so dark? See, that's like the dark side of the moon over here. This side.
I don't know. I think you might have to pivot your camera a little bit or something. You look very orange.
You see my hairline?
No.
Anthony. All right, hey guys, hold my beer. That was loud. We're going live here. This is something I love doing. And you know what's cool is like you know, in this market right now, especially, you're able to do it even more often. I'm telling you, it's more important than you think. The ability to talk with someone, they're just getting hit up right and left by people that have no idea what they're doing. They're over it. They're done with it. Don't let that be a deterrent. I've had, I don't know how many people hit me back here, you know, recently and just say like, or even some of my like younger sales reps, like, oh, they said they don't have anything. I'm like, just send this and like send that. And the next thing you know, they want to talk to them. So, you know, you just got to be able to talk and show that you could bring some value, even if it's like right off the bat, you're not gonna be able to show your value, but get them interested and make them want to hear what you have to say. And then when you do get a chance to say it correctly. And with some, what is that, Tony? Some intent, be intentional.
Be intentional in everything you do.
Intentional. Unless you run into somebody, then make sure you're clear that the fact is that was unintentional.
Correct.
Those things happen. Well, hey, listen, we're kicking it off. New thing we got going. We got Will Jenkins.
What's up?
A quick fact to kick us off for the, you know, he's gonna get every time he's gonna give us a quick fact that's relevant, current, and in the logistics and supply chain industry. So yes. Let's get your fill with Will. Go ahead.
Oh, man, I love that. We can coin that as the little line for it. So I was checking out an article on Transport Topics, and the topic for today, we're talking about creative solutions. Well, one thing leading to having to get creative is the driver shortage and how hard it is for different carriers to retain drivers. So in this article, they talked about the fact that the average retention bonus paid to drivers was up 81.3% year over year for an annual average of about $1,200. So it's interesting to see all of the different things that carriers are doing to retain drivers. Obviously, they are unbelievably hard to come by and important if you want to keep your fleet rolling. So TJ, let's talk about creative solutions. What do we got?
Creativity, something I learned in second grade art class. I made a beaver out of clay and I won an award. So ever since then, my mom's always told me that I was special, but so did my art teacher. And I took that and ran with it, Tony. But no, it's you just got to understand what's going on. I mean, that's just the key. I talk about it all the time. You know, I've been freed up a lot lately to delve in on other things and look at other processes as we've grown as quick as we have. I came in, I think we were doing around 40 million in freight spend. And I think this year we're 500 plus million in freight spend and that we're managing. And it's just unbelievable, like the amount of opportunities that are out there. And so I'm looking at some of these younger people and I'm saying, all right, so what are you doing if this happens? Or what are you doing if they say this? And I don't know. I'm like, and they run into that roadblock and they stop. That's it. They don't know though. They don't know what else to do. And so it gets you thinking that, you know, a lot of the success that people see is really just a result of their ability to understand the industry and understand the current status of the industry. You know, if what worked for you in 2018, if you're still using that stuff, I mean, you're frustrated. It's not working now. And, you know, understanding like what's going on and where it's at and what they're running into, because you're listening to your other customers, you're listening to your other prospects, you're listening to people on the floor, you're involved, you're listening to people, you know, on social networking, whatever it is, and you're getting an idea of what's going on. And that's what people want. There is so many shippers right now that I've said this before, they're outside of that manual right now. You know, whether they had an SOP or a process or whatever it is, they don't have, they never had a manual that you know, in that manual that's the, you know, if they're used to the bed and the bath, we're in the beyond section, you know, at that store. So, you know, they're outside of that.
I cannot believe you just said that.
Well, you know, it's a great store. They need help. We're going there Saturday, right, Tony, after Home Depot. I don't know if we'll have time, but we're going to try.
If you come into the South Bend area, then maybe I could squeeze in a time for you.
Up in the Bend. What was I saying though, guys? Thanks for throwing me off, Tony. I appreciate it.
Bed Bath and way beyond.
But yeah, they're, you know, they're outside of that, and so, you know, bringing those solutions to the table, because they've got people they got to answer to, right? And they're sitting in these meetings, and a lot of these higher ups, I'm telling you, I've heard this from people, are just going, why don't you do this? Why don't you just, why are you paying this much? Why are you doing that? Give them a reason to justify it, like, you know, or give them a reason, or help them figure it out. There's just a lot of things that you can do. You know, I've helped, you know, change just how, you know, processes in their loading, processes in their, and where they, if they're dropping, if they're not dropping, where they're parking, what they have on site. Listen, everyone wants to be a shipper of choice right now. You just want to be a shipper that isn't hated. You know what I mean? At the end of the day, and when you're stuck at a Walmart or you're stuck somewhere like that, you know, trying to get unloaded for 14, 15, 16 hours, and you haven't had breakfast or lunch, and there's nowhere to go to the bathroom, you can't pull your trailer out, and it's not a drop trailer, you're pissed. These drivers are, you know, people are pissed. I'm not picking on Walmart, because Walmart has more than one location. I'm not saying it's, but you know what I mean? Like, just as an example came to my head, I'm probably gonna get sued.
I've been trying to be a shipper choice for 20 years.
But, you know, I've worked with people on that, because like I've talked with them just on the fact that, hey, what happens now is going to affect the future. It's going to affect your rates. You know, drivers know what these shippers and receivers are doing. And I've had my owner operators even just like take a lower rate because and go deadhead a little bit farther because they weren't going to go into that shipper again.
So TJ, I got a question for you. You talked about drop trailers there a moment ago. If you're trying to craft up a solution for a shipper that doesn't have drop trailers in place already, what are some ways to convey the importance of that and how that might help make their supply chain work a little bit more effectively? Because I think that's a huge piece of really utilizing capacity at this point. You got to figure out ways to keep these trucks moving. Right.
So the importance of that is a couple things. Number one, it depends on the type of shipper. Some of them have to have it because they're picking different orders at different times, going different places, multi-stop, whatever it is. But what you're running into now is just the fact that, you know, they're producing and they're trying to get this stuff off the dock and out. And there's not a lot of storage space right now either. You can't find, you know, the warehouses and whatnot. So they're just trying to get them out the door as quick as they can. And they'd rather have just guarantee themselves a truck and have him on site waiting there, knowing that he's there so that they can at least get it loaded when it does come out. So if you can find a way to get that done. Now, a couple of issues you're going to run into is with people that don't use drop trailers at this point is, number one, space. They may not have space for them. Okay. So something I've done before is I found, I've looked around and I found lots that are close by. Hell, remember Tony, I was standing up at your plant and I told you, I said, you know, if you just gravel that area over there, hell, you can fit 7 trailers. How long ago was that? You can fit 7 trailers over there. And, you know, find a lot that's close by, a secure lot. See what you can do with that. I've done that before, just down the road from a couple big plants that I've worked with before. And then find either one of your own, depending if you're a carrier or if you're a broker, find a local driver. You know, call around to cross docks. A lot of cross docks have those day cabs, and pay them $50 a shuttle. You know, if they got a shuttle and empty over and loaded it back over to the loaded lot, they can do that. Because the number 2 issue is outside of space is not having a yard dog, right? So if you don't have a spotter, I mean, what you got a drop trailer, you got to get it in the dock. Right. And so that's one big thing there as well. So the other thing is dock space. So you got to have the ability to be more flexible and understand that, hey, they may, when they produce X, you know, amount of order off a machine, they may only be able to load a quarter of it, pull it out of the dock and let it sit for a little bit before they can go finish loading the rest, because they got to get another one in the dock of what that product they just made. So you could figure out those solutions, and those things have been done before. This isn't a new thing. these are things that usually people on site have done. Usually some guy that comes in and does a supply chain, analyst or something comes in and looks at and shipper efficiency and whatnot. But these are things that can be done. And right now, if they're willing to pay, okay, this is what you gotta understand. They're willing to pay extra accessorials to just guarantee there's either a truck there or sitting on site, whether it's detention, layover, or recovery trucks, or just paying just to get a truck. They're willing to give you a little bit extra rate to figure something out like that. Like, hey, listen, if I go rent trailers for you, I can go rent as a broker. You can go rent trailers. You know what I mean? And I'll add it to the cost. And we can look at it that way. But you're solving an issue for them. Because
What do you do for non-dry van drop trailers? Do you have alternatives? I mean, I've never seen anybody drop trailers that weren't dry vans, right?
Well, unless you go by Nucor, and there's 785 of them sitting out front. But a Nucor and SDI or a New Mill, they've got the space. It's something they've been doing. If they don't have dry vans, again, it just kind of comes down to space. But a lot of times, what you can do too is if you rent your own trailers, there's a lot of power onlys out now. So right now though, there's a lot more power onlys that are available. Trailers are rare right now. They're hard to find because everybody wanted to do drop trailers because of space. And so power onlys really took off, and people were buying trucks and they're getting trucks. But the problem is that all those people that got those trucks couldn't get a trailer, and trailers are harder than hell to find here in this last year and a half. So there's a shit ton of power onlys out there. So find a couple power only guys. If you've got trailers or access to trailers or whatever it is, or just having them on hand, even. I mean, that's something you can come to a customer with and say, hey, I've literally worked with another broker before. I've done this where I've had power only guys haul their trailers. They had trailers there and they wanted to take more freight, and they just gave the freight to us. They had their trailers there, but they knew that they were going to get clout for that. They were going to get in better with their shipper and build that relationship. And it was able to, bring us more business too. So, drop trailers are something that right now are hard to come by, but if you've got access to them or can find access to them, it's a good thing. And if you have access to power only fleets, there's a lot of shippers that have drop trailers. I know that we tried to rent one down in Georgia, and this was like end of 2020, I think it was. And there was a Publix down there. And they went and rented 40 trailers. They had 40 trailers rented. We couldn't rent one because they were out. The extra lease down there was. So you had a shipper that had rented 40 trailers because they needed space. And they may not need the space. They may have the trailer still there, or they may still be using them, or whatever it is. But if they've got them there and you've got power only units, that's the piece of the puzzle that's missing. And everybody's struggling. And if you bring up, if you do a little research and understand where they're at, what location they're in, what market they're in, what commodity they're shipping, you've got a pretty good shot of getting their attention. If you bring up the fact you've got some solutions.
Yeah, I think it's important to realize how much more efficient you can make a shipper's supply chain if you can provide drop trailers, and if you can find a way to essentially be able to turn those trucks faster, you make them more available. There's just so much of an efficiency gain with that. And actually, I haven't asked Tony this, but Tony, you using any drop trailers?
Nope. I don't, because we don't have. That is a lie. It is a lie. I take that back. I use a drop trailer that goes about 5 miles west of our plant to a sister plant, and we run stuff back and forth. And they have a ton of storage only trailers, non-roadworthy stuff where they're just using it to warehouse and move. And then we have 3 or 4 of them that run back and forth between our plant, where they're more of an order fulfillment center and we are the manufacturer. So we'll run warranty trailers back and forth with items, and then they ship it out. So yeah, we do. I guess, yes, we do use drop trailers. There are trailers, but yeah.
Yeah. And you're a liar because you have the sawdust trailer on the site. No, you have a sawdust trailer?
No.
Oh, that was the other plant.
Yeah, I was like, we have metal products, so no.
Yeah, that was the other plant. I apologize for that, Tony.
I have a new career thing.
He had a trailer out attached to the plant with a big hose coming out and then into the trailer. And it was like all the sawdust got sucked in there. but they didn't care to like empty it ever. So like there's like huge piles of, it looked like the Indiana Dunes, like huge piles of like sawdust outside the trailers. Like, we'll empty it later. But I'm pretty sure there was like hamsters living in there and stuff.
That was a disagreement between the type of hose and the maintenance team that had to maintain it, and then the vendor who moved those trailers in and out. It was actually, they were buying the sawdust.
They were hamster farmers. I told you that. Remember?
Could be.
I started thinking the wheel was turning. If you know what I mean.
Wow.
Sorry about that. Too soon.
That was way too soon.
We're a little too early. For
what were you going somewhere with that, Will? Sorry.
Yeah. Well, essentially, what I was going to say was, as we look at creative solutions for shippers, Tony, are there different things that you're doing or your team is doing to make shipments more appealing as capacity is tight? Because I know in my realm, if it's more challenging to cover if it's more challenging to ship out of or receive into, that makes it harder to cover, which means it's more expensive. And so conveying that in conversations makes it a whole lot easier to be collaborative and come up with creative ways to work it out.
So yeah, I can address that from the past at the steel company where I used to work, because I mean, we run our own fleet here now, and we had our own fleet at the steel joint too, but we had a lot of outside freight that we used commercial carriers on, and we were notorious for being slow loading of strip cut to length product. And we re-engineered the whole design of how that works, and we booked these loads based on the fact that when they picked up, I would have like a 2-hour notice before it got picked up. So we would stage these truckloads, and it was like 40,000 pounds, 45,000 pounds, 48,000 pounds of finished goods in a pile. So instead of storing it in the racks the way they normally store them in rows, we would pull the load. And these cranes are incredibly slow, these overhead cranes that are picking up this 20-foot bundle of steel. We would stage it in a truckload on the ground next to the dock, so that when the truck pulled in, it was right there. We scanned it all, made the paperwork, set it on the truck, and it was a 20-minute process versus 2-hour from the storage location to the truck. We created that stage location, so when our loaders had time in between trucks, they would continue to stage those next loads. And then when the carriers came in, we were telling them to get out of the dock and tarp outside, versus them complaining to us on how long it was taking to load. And we just changed the process so that it was, again, being very intentional about what we were shipping.
So I think
understanding that matters.
Yeah, I was going to say, how do you get people to take a step back and think about those processes? Because sometimes things move so slowly, it takes forever to get that approval to say, hey, we're going to do this differently. But it probably improved what y'all were doing tremendously.
Man, from your point of view, I'm not sure how to do that other than, hey, look at this cost here that we're adding on to these loads because you're taking so long to load them. Is there a way that you can get more efficient on loading? How do we get this load staged so that when my truck gets there, he's in and out of the dock? I mean, we didn't even do appointments. It was first come, first serve. So I'm sorry that you got here when we were busy. That's not our fault if everybody shows up at once. How is that my fault when trucks show up at the same time? I don't want to pay for that because 5 trucks showed up when you happen to get to be number 6 in line. But this morning, if you'd have been the early bird, maybe there was no trucks and so how, from your point of view as a carrier or broker, you got to work with the shipper to see what it is that they can do to help you make it cheaper for them. And then again, then your carrier, if you're a broker, your carrier loves it. And if you're a carrier, your driver loves it because they're in and out of there. They want to be on the road with the wheels turning, making money. Everybody wants that. Everybody wins on that deal.
And that the problem is that there's a lot of shippers that don't care, or there's a lot of people that are maybe even in charge down that that maybe run that don't care. They don't care. Like a Tony Darnell. Like they're not going to take the time to sit down and think, what am I actually paying? Why are my rates high? Why are the rates higher? It's just the market, right? That's just what it is. They're going to every meeting and just say, hey, the market's high, capacity's down, right?
Yeah,
that's what it is, and we're bombarded. We can't get everything out. Instead of actually sitting down and saying, hey, I made this one little change this week, and next week I'm going to make this one little change, and I'm going to make this one little change. But to them, it's not a big deal. So, or they just don't know how to do that. They've been put in this position, right? The guy before him sitting home taking unemployment. Now they're in the spot. They don't know what they're doing. So you could come to them with these solutions. Now, the key here is understanding exactly what they're doing. But you bring something up like that, you want to talk about a shipper or a customer relying on you and leaning on you, giving you more freight. You just made them look good in front of their boss, right? You don't have to take credit for that. You're going to get more freight. You're good. But you could come up with those things. Like you could come up with ways to say, hey, why don't we spread this out? Why don't I mean, you don't do appointments, but I tell you what I'm going to do. You give me X amount of shipments, and I'll schedule them out through 2-hour windows. So this picks up between 10 and noon. This one picks up between noon and 2. I could do that for you there. If they're behind because there's X amount of trucks or staging areas like what Tony said. Where could you get space? You know what I mean? What incentives could you do to help if there's wait times? If you can't avoid wait times, what can you do to still make sure you get capacity? I had a shipper just 2 months ago I put together. We were going in and out of there quite a bit with our assets, and then also helping with brokerage, and real close with them. And they're really frustrated because they're like, at first, TJ, we kind of got like upset, hey, make sure your drivers are being respectful and everything. And then one lady's like, then I stayed one night to help, and I realized that these guys are just out there, like they don't know, they're looking for people. Like I have drivers come up to me like, well, who do I talk to? Like, I'm just sitting out here. I don't know. I got to eat. I got to, can I use the restroom? And she's like, I don't know if there's so I arranged to have 2 porta potties put out there and called around, and we got 3 food trucks that come out there, from a certain time to a certain time. So, they got food trucks, and the driver standing over there, sitting there chit-chatting, put a picnic table. The one guy, she said she found had a picnic table, and they're over there chit-chatting, eating food. Now waiting's not as bad, right? You can drop a deuce and then go eat a taco, do it all over again. You know what I mean? So it's key though. I mean, those little things like that are so huge because, as a broker or carrier, you're sitting in an office thinking, how do I get more of this freight? How do I stay dedicated on it? How do I get this and be consistent? At the end of the day, it's all whether your driver wants to do that or not, or, whatever your carrier wants to. You maybe have to plan to be consistent on this freight, but the first week or so, you lost your dedicated carrier because he's like, I ain't doing this, man. He's like, I got to go down to, the Hardee's just to, rumble one out. I'm like, I'm trying to be on site, get it done. I mean, that's just, they may not have access to even do that.
If you're a shipper and you can clearly mark everything, if you can provide overnight parking, if you can provide clean, accessible restrooms, and you can provide an answer, just an answer sometimes, if there's a wait, hey, you're up third in line. This guy and this guy are here first. They're in front of you. You're third. When that guy pulls through, you're next in. If you can have load stage, if you can become that place where people want to go get loaded because they like you, they like your process, they like your facility, something, you watch and see how your capacity changes and your pricing.
And guess what? People don't like waiting in line for anything. I definitely don't.
Right.
I literally will get out of line just to not be in line.
If you go to Cedar Point or Six Flags, you can pay extra to not wait in line.
Or I'll do that. Exactly. Or I'll drop some bows on some people if I have to. But my point is that, especially when you're hungry, right? So you're waiting in line. Like, look at Chick-fil-A. Hell, I drive by the Chick-fil-A's here at Fort Wayne. It's like, 3-4 mile long line going around. Everybody's waiting in line. You know why? Because they got 7 people out there running from car to car, getting orders, communicating with the people up there. So people feel like they're already involved, even though they're waiting in line. They're just trucking them basically, but they're getting their orders in. They're getting things cooked. They're getting ahead of it. They've got an efficient and successful process that works, and people will wait in line. People don't look at the line that's a mile long and say, I don't want to be in that line. Well, not only do they have that, but they also have like 4 lines instead of 1, right? So they're adapting to what they have going, right? So can you do something like that at a shipper? When guys are in line, can you have a guy going down and say, just an update, hey, just an update on this. We're here on this, and this machine just ran this product, blah, blah, blah. At the end of the day, there's times that product that this guy, if you know what truck checked in for what product or where it's going, it may be ready. And you may be able to make your job a lot easier because you got this shit staged on the dock, but the guy that's supposed to pick it up is 7th in line. You know what I mean? But if you're
and the people you're dealing with are going to be easier too.
Pull out and around. Pull. I know you're sixth in line, whatever it is. Pull out and around. Products ready. We're going to have you come over here to this dock and get you in here or whatever. Right now, what you've run into then is drivers bitching and everything like that. But if you've got people out there communicating and walking walking the line, they understand it. They get it. They're like, okay, his product's ready. All right. Well, that's unfortunate, but whatever, it is what it is. And so, but you've got people communicating, talking to them, and those little things like that. I mean, guy's sitting there, he just wants to know, like, hey, what is there an ETA on this? I mean, what's going on? You know, so, and I always tell my guys, get out of the truck and go talk to somebody. Sometimes there's a language barrier, so, or sometimes you try to get out of the truck and they yell at you to get back in. So, you know, just being more aware of what's going on, it's going to save you a ton of money. And some people don't care about that. They're not worried about saving money. So, but it's going to cost them in the long run. You just, the whole thing's just going to stay harder. Every RFP you do, every spot bid you get screwed on. I mean, it's just going to keep happening if you're not a place that people want to go.
Yeah, I think that collaborative nature goes a long way, because when I roll through some of the best relationships I have right now, a lot of them are with shippers that ask, hey, what can we do better? Or where can we help? What do you think would help us be a shipper of choice? Are there any areas or places that you're noticing that your drivers are getting held up, and they're seeking that feedback? And we want to be able to also reciprocate, do the same thing, you know, ask them questions about things that we can do better. But that collaborative nature goes a long way, because if there are a handful of things that'll make them a more appealing shipper in this market, that could cost you thousands of dollars on a daily basis across thousands of shipments.
And sometimes it just takes a little bit of extra work. I mean, but if you do it and you're successful, you've got something you can take to the next one. So one thing I run into a lot is like, well, we're drop trailers here, you know, drop for 24 hours and we'll let you know when you come in and get it. But like right now, it's just, that's a lot of, like, first of all, finding somebody that can drop trailers is hard. And when they do, the rates are high. I mean, rates are just high. They're going to be. And so I had done this was back in 2018, actually, when I first did this with a large customer, but I found out when their start loading time was. Okay. So when they plan to start loading it, whether it was on a certain shift or whether it was at a certain time, like we always start loading before 9 a.m. Okay. Well, how long does it take you to load the trailer? It takes us 4 hours to load a trailer. Okay. So if I were to sell this load as drop your trailer before 9 a.m. and come back at 2 p.m., 3 p.m., and I always put like a 2-hour buffer in there. So you got to drop your trailer by, if you always start loading by 9 a.m., I always like to have them drop it by 7 a.m. because if first shift is ahead and they want to start loading it, they can, right? And they're not late then. But then you show back up at 1 or 2 or 3 and, you know, done loading by then and pick it up and go, right? So that's a built-in detention, right? That the carrier already knows going into it. So you're not dealing with shitty drivers, you know, or that are wondering what's going on. They already know the deal. Okay. They know they're getting a good rate anyways, but you're able to save them money and your rate then can be lower. Like I can get lower. It's just a longer live load basically, compared to me charging you a shit ton to do a 24-hour drop trailer. And that's worked out tremendous. But what happens though, is that the shipper then has to do a little extra work. So when they get a load and you take it and they say, you know, sometimes it was like their start time was a different time. It wasn't the same time every day. It was like, you know, we're going to start loading this at 10 p.m. tonight. Okay, cool. So they got to let you know. And then they got to let you know when it is unloaded or when it is loaded. But as long as you got somebody designated to do that, that can walk in from the docks, go over to the computer to shoot an email real fast or whatever it is, it can make their lives a lot easier. They're not dealing with, you know, shitty drivers and they're getting way better rates on it. So
how do you say no? How do you say no when it's not a good fit? You just can't find a solution. How do you say no and still have an opportunity for tomorrow?
I think you always leave out. What do you mean?
When do you realize it's not a good fit? Right?
Like me as a broker or carrier?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. If you believe in what you're doing and you feel like you're bringing value, I'm not wasting my time. I'm not. But I will do this. I will always let them know exactly what I can do. And I've probably already maybe done that at that point. And if so, you know, I never burn bridges, but I'll say, hey, listen, you know, this isn't working out. This is what we can and can't do. I've laid this out for you. Actually, I got a template here I've attached. If down the road, this is something you want to do, let me know. You know, they're going to struggle. And 50% of the time they end up reaching back out to you. But if not, there's some people that just like it. They don't care. They don't care if they're going to struggle. They don't care if they're behind. They don't care about the drivers. They don't care about rates. And that's just how it is. It's people. That's how it is. Every profession has them. right? There's turds out there, and you're going to deal with it. You're going to run into them, and it is what it is. And unless you stop spinning your wheels and realize that, move on. But I tell you one thing, turds get flushed quick, a lot quicker than ones that aren't turds. So what I'm
That question
saying,
was really meant for Will, because I know, like,
quick sales tip though.
Man,
You want to have a good lead. You want to have a good lead and maybe a good in. I'm subscribed to like 2 different job boards. I'm not looking for a job, but I get alerts every time a supply chain analyst job comes up, a director of supply chain comes up, a shipping manager comes up, and I get alerts. And then I know what company, what shipper is now hiring for a new shipping manager or director of operations. What's that mean? A couple of things. Number one, they got rid of the guy for a reason. They're bringing somebody new in, which means how many times you talk to somebody, they're like, I'm good on carriers. I've been using the same guy for 30 years, right? Old carrier base, new guy comes in, he's like, I don't want to use those people. Or a new broker. I mean, how many CH Robs? I don't know how many people I've replaced that had been maybe moving shipments for that company for a long time. And so the new guy comes in, he's like, hey, I'm not using them, I'm going to use you. So but I knew that they were new and there's new opportunities. So like I said, turds get flushed quick. That's how it works.
that is the 4th turd reference we've had so far.
that's it, at least.
Yeah.
Way
Oh,
too
was
much
it? I thought I
crap
stopped.
talking.
I thought I stopped at 3. I always stop at the turd one.
I thought you stopped at number 2.
Man.
Yes.
Nailed it.
Tony. Nice, dude. Good job, Tony.
The question was Will's question. Put in the comments here, but you guys can't see it. It was from Will this morning, or this before the show. How do you know how do you know when it's time to say no? How do you know when it's just not a good fit and you got to move on? I mean, how do you?
For me, that has to do with the way you're working through the process with a shipper or a carrier. So if I'm working through something and I've been transparent the entire time, explaining what my capabilities are and whatnot, once you get to the point where you know that your service is going to be impacted, or it's a particular mode that you can't move, or maybe that lane isn't a fit, it's okay to say, here's what I can do. This part here doesn't make sense for us. Let's see what we can find that works for both of us. Because if we're being transparent and I take this on and I don't do it well, you're going to think poorly of us and our ability to execute freight. And that might just be a small subset of what we're doing. Maybe that mode isn't good for us, so we're spread too thin. Or maybe that particular region isn't a good fit for us, and now you think that we're not good at moving freight, and it's really not true. That might just be one piece that isn't a good fit. So to me, I think a lot of it has to do with transparency, and I can name off example after example, just working through RFP cycles with new or current shippers, and from the beginning saying, hey, this is what I want, right? There's all this other stuff, and I could probably give you pricing on these other things, but if you award it, I may not execute it the way that you're expecting, and that's going to hamper the relationship that we have. So for me, it's just about being upfront from the beginning, because then if I'm working with Tony, who doesn't have freight, well, he's going to know what I can do and what I can't do.
Right. But so what I'm hearing is what TJ is always saying. Even though that's not the best fit and you're not really saying no, you're still providing a value there. Mm-hmm. You're still providing a value in a service that makes you trustworthy, right? How many sales guys say no to a sale, right? 0. Everybody always says yes. But if you have the nerve to say, hey, this is not our best lane, this is not our best commodity, mode of transportation, whatever, but I can help you find the guy that is the best fit for that. Now I'm going to go to you for an answer for something else that I don't know the answer to. I'm going to go to keep providing value, man, because that's.
You'd be surprised how many people know other people that are in the same industry.
Exactly.
Or they go, and it's unbelievable even how many go to another company and they remember you. Like I couldn't use TJ. Hey, I couldn't use you all that much at the last place or whatever, but like here, I got a lot more freedom. We can definitely do this or do that. But and not to go into sales, because we don't want to talk about sales, right? We're talking about, but it is part of, I think part of sales is, and I hate to even call it sales, but like getting in with somebody is showing them that that's what you do. Yeah, you can create innovative solutions. But I've always said, like, would you rather be in a sales meeting trying to make a big sale, or trying to sell something to somebody, or in an interview? Do you feel more which one do you feel more confident in? An interview or trying to sell, like sit down and want to sell something to somebody?
What am I interviewing for?
A job.
What kind of job? I mean, is it my role?
Details, Tony. God, you make everything so hard. But
I'm thinking interview.
Most people, normal people that have a job, did an interview, right? But there's some people you couldn't kick, drag, scream, and you couldn't get them to go sit in a sale. They're just not salespeople, right? But the reason why they're okay with an interview and why they'll do it is because they believe in themselves, right? They know what value they can bring, right? So they believe in what the product they're selling, which is themselves. So they know the ins and outs of themselves. They know what value they can bring. They know their faults. And they make sure to highlight the value that they do bring, what differentiates them from other people. And people like selling themselves because they believe in themselves. They believe it. They know it exists. They know what's going on here, right? So if you're selling something, you got to believe it. And the only way to really believe in it is to know everything in and out. And if you don't like what you're selling, you're not going to be a good salesperson. You're not going to like what you do. You know what I mean? Like I could sit down with anybody that's got freight and sell my company because I believe in it. I know exactly what we can do. I know what we can't do. I know what we're bad at. I know what we're getting better at, or I know what we're great at. I know what differentiates us from people. I know exactly what services we can provide. I know exactly what services that we don't provide that we could figure out and do for you. But it's because I believe in the company. I believe in what we do. Like it's so much easier to sit down and like, I'm passionate about that because, and they can hear that, right? They can hear when you're passionate about something, you believe in it. And if you don't like it, then you don't want to go with it. Okay, well, here's a small part of what we can do. Let's start small and let us prove ourselves to you. Unless you run into somebody who just doesn't want to hear it and that's fine. Move on, because I know I'm not going to waste my time if you run into that situation with somebody that doesn't care, doesn't even want to hear it, when there's somebody out there I could help that would take, benefit from what I could bring to it. So, because I'm confident to take a no, because I know I can go to the next person and sell what I believe in. So if you believe in what you're selling, then it's good. So to understand how to sell innovative solutions, how to do innovative solutions, talk with people, understand them, get in there, like take on things. If you could dodge a wrench, you could dodge a ball, Tony.
Man, I'll tell you this much. I don't know. You can dodge a lot of stuff, but you can't dodge these rates right now. Good luck.
So, but you could dodge a wrench, you could dodge a ball. At the end of the day, a wrench should be easier to dodge than a ball because it's less mass, it's smaller, right? You don't have to move as much, but it's mental, right? It's mental. Like a wrench is going to hurt more if I don't dodge it, right? But when you get in there and you do those things, it makes everything else seem easier, right? So get in there and learn these solutions. Go out there, go drive out to the shipper. If you got one that's close enough, go out there or go visit them. Go to the docks. You know what I mean? Go down and talk to those people. You want to bring value to the people sitting in the office? Don't bring them Dunkin' Donuts. They're the ones awarding you loads, right? Oh, I'm going to bring them Dunkin' Donuts or take them out for a beer or whatever. Cool. That might get you in a little bit. Go down to the docks, meet the people down there, learn what they're dealing with, figure out plans, learn things that they wish they could tell those people that they don't have access to, and then go sit down with those people in the office and tell them that. Then see how valuable you look.
TJ, how do you approach creative pricing right now? There's a bunch of ways that we can price, lots of different time periods you can set it up. What do you do with new opportunities right now asking you for pricing? Because it could get a little dicey.
I pull people out of the mindset of commitment. I think right now and for a long time, everything's been so committed. If I give it for this rate, then they're just going to expect that, or that's what it's going to be committed at for a year, or this is this and that. I pull that right off the table, and I just talk to them about I understand. Let's just live in reality right now, right? Like if you don't pay X amount on this dedicated lane, the likelihood of the carrier accepting all these tenders with the tender rejection rate being so high is pretty low, and it's going to go to spot bid. You're going to get murdered at twice the rate. All right. So, or if you think that you don't want to pay that higher rate because you don't want to lock in or whatever, don't do it. Don't do something where you're locking people in. I am okay with having a conversation. I understand that rates are up right now, right? But it doesn't benefit me. Like if I want a long-term relationship I'm trying to build a long-term relationship with a shipper or a customer, like it doesn't benefit me to gouge you, and then when things change, me get cut. It also doesn't benefit me to go too low to where you're wanting to be because your boss wants you to be there and not make any money, because then I cut myself, right? So for this to work, we got to be able to work together on the ebbs and flows, right? For us to be able to ride the same motorcycle, we both got to lean when it's turning. I mean, at the end of the day. And so, Tony, you know what I'm talking about. You're always on the back with me. So
Never.
It's a gold wing. So the point is that like, I'm always big on like having that conversation. Like, listen, this is where we got to be at now. But here's what I do. My job is to source carriers. This is a new lane. Okay. This may be outside of my network. Okay. So this is what we got to be right now to bring you capacity. I want to bring you committed capacity, not just capacity, committed capacity, right? Give me an opportunity to get in here and start working this lane. Let me learn the ins and outs of the shipper, the receiver. Let me build my network around it. Okay. Once I start sourcing carriers, I can drive rates down. Once I start recruiting drivers, I can drive rates down. So if I got to recruit an owner operator, I could pull a guy off a lane right now that he likes running, and he could go over and fill this gap. There's nothing holding back from just saying he's a lot more likely to flake on it though, right? Like, I want to go home or whatever. But if I go recruit a guy that lives in that lane, lives at the shipper in the origin or destination or in between, and he loves running it because his wife's happy because he's home every night, he ain't giving that lane up for nothing. I mean, when these guys get on a lane they like, they aren't getting off that. They don't even want to miss a load because they know if they do, they'll get replaced with somebody to run it. And then that guy may get to keep it, right? So I'm trying to bring committed capacity. Now that's going to start at a higher rate, but my job is to drive rates down. And the only way to do that is to find carriers that want to run it, that want to be on this lane. They will do it for less money because they're happy with what they're doing. So give me a chance to do that. Market starts dropping, same thing. Let's have a discussion. Say, hey, all right, rates are down. I'm willing to do that. You know what I mean? So if you're in it for the long term, because the biggest thing for me is like, that's only on like a set amount of runs. At the end of the day, most people have a lot of different stuff. I may be able to go make my money on the expedites, or I may be able to make my money on the last minute loads. I know for a fact that after 5, there's usually 1 or 2 loads that they really need help with and need a truck on. So when they offer me one at noon and they're hurting, I'll take it for the rate they need it at, right? I'll help them out. So I'll break even on that one at noon because I know at 5 I'm going to get a call and they're going to pay whatever, right? So I'll make my money there. So it's just kind of again, it's a transparent, open conversation with them, letting them know, the reality of it. I mean, the reality of it is this is where we're at. This is what I got to do. But if we do this correctly, what my job is to do is to drive rates down. But if you're expecting that to happen on 3,200 lanes on an RFP, when I haven't even ran half of them, it's not realistic.
Yeah. The interesting part to me is thinking about how many old habits have had to die over the last 16 months around saying it's got to be an annual RFP,
Yep.
or maybe it's 6 months or whatever it might be, because we have example after example of massive multi-billion-dollar shippers that are saying, you know what, we got to do quarterly because we can't get people to commit. And you put all this work through this RFP exercise, and then a month in, the routing guide is broken and you spent countless hours working through figuring it out. And all things considered, the rates of early July are not the rates of September 1st, right? If we're being honest about what we're seeing, it's just right now in this market, it's not, it's too fluid. So I think it's important to have those conversations up front and say, look, here's where I feel most comfortable committing to this pricing, whether it's a month or a quarter, whatever it might be. But you got to have those conversations up front, because in the end, both parties are going to be better off if you understand what those parameters look like. And it's not always easy to move that needle to the point where they say, yeah, it does make sense. But I've seen more shippers than I ever thought would say, yeah, monthly pricing or quarterly pricing are better for us. And these are very, very large companies. Never thought I'd see the day.
And the other thing is that they're not, as a shipper, like, are you just chasing capacity all the time? Do you catch it and then lose it? I mean, you catch it, then you lose it, then you catch it, then you lose it. Because, even if you did like shorter RFQs, like, all right, you got the capacity, now you got another carrier. Who knows if they even have as much, right? You send an RFP out and you want them to price all these lanes, but you never have a conversation with them. You don't even talk to them. And it doesn't really make sense to me, because it's like, if I'm, I don't know, you look at like people talk about like prison, like you put somebody in prison or whatever, it doesn't really do anything. They're going to be this, or you could like work to, what do they call it? Rehabilitate them, right? Or whatever. It's kind of like that. It's like saying, hey, here's a process. Like, for me to actually capture this capacity and keep it, I got to have somebody that has the capacity, and then tell them exactly how I want to do it, and give them tips and help them out. So give them a chance, right? So let them get in there and grow that capacity, but show them, like, tell them that, like, hey, I'm going to bring you in at this rate. You've got a 3-month window, right, to grow your network a little bit more. And I'd like to see, we'll sit down and we'll talk. Then I'd like to see maybe a 5%, decrease. Okay. We'll talk about where you're at, where your network is, how many more, if you've got any more, if you're a carrier, if you've got any more drivers on board, if you're a broker, if you've got any more carriers on board. Right. And let's just work together to try to capture that capacity rather than just bringing in a broker that's got X amount of trucks or dedicated carriers. And then because somebody's 10 cents lower the next time, you cut them and you lose all that. Right. And then you just get somebody else's network. They don't know the shipper and receiver. They don't know the ins and outs of it. Get that rolling. It's going to cost you more up front. Right. But you're putting a little bit of effort in and some time to help work with these people. And I'll tell you what, nobody does that. So when you do that, some of these brokers, some of these young guys, some of these carriers, they love it. They'll lower it because you're coming in higher. You're giving them a chance to do that. Like they're able to sell that to their owner operators better, or to their carriers more. They're making better relationships with their drivers too, because they've got people that want to run the load. So they feel like they're involved. They feel like they're involved in your supply chain. So I'm not sure exactly why that's never a thing. I feel like if you really wanted to capture capacity rather than just utilize capacity, I think that's your best bet. But I know that in some people's structures, it's just impossible to do. So
the best conversations I've ever had are the ones that happen a month and a half before the bid comes out, where they say, these are your incumbent lanes. Let's talk about them before they hit the bid. And then they don't go on the bid and you get to keep them. Very much so in the scenario that you just talked about, because I already know who runs it. And if we're going to be honest about it, they're probably going to keep running it. If the rate's just going to change, right? They're going to figure out who has it and the rate's going to fluctuate and maybe there's some different capacity. But if we already have developed the network and we have the captive carriers to be able to run it, you want to be able to do that because it makes that switching cost so much lower. There is no switching cost. You don't have to go run an RFP on that. We've got those.
I always tell my people hear that, like when I get awarded new stuff and I just got awarded something, what does it say? Oh, I think so. I don't know. We'll look at if I get awarded new lanes or whatever, and people are talking like, oh, I'm going to source carriers. It's like, dude, this lane isn't new. This lane's been running for years. Okay. And there's probably somebody that's been running it for quite a while. Right. So go on Google, go to Google Maps, go to satellite images, zoom in and see what freaking trailers are sitting on site. Hell, my owner used to drive to Detroit and used to go around and see what trailers were on site. He wanted to see what carriers were in there because those guys have been running it. They want to run it. They don't know who just got awarded the lane. Some broker, broker Steve over here just won the lanes again. They're looking around for it, or they'd run it if they could, but they may be looking for something different. Or they're talking to the shipper, and the shipper may end up giving a heads up. But you get to them first. I mean, those lanes. Why waste time sourcing carriers when there's carriers that already run that lane and like it?
Totally. So here's a doozy. Tell me the most complex freight situation scenario lane that you solved for a shipper. I have a pretty fun one.
All right, say that again. Sorry, I was reading your chat. Unslick.
Unslick.
So tell me the most complex shipping situation or complex lane scenario that you solved for a shipper. You really had to go back to the drawing board and bring some creative situation or solution to figure it out.
Modified their dock.
I don't understand.
So they wanted to take a large automotive customer wanted to take a lane away from us that we actually had I think it was like 10 loads a day, like 10 drivers running, 10 drivers running. So it was like 20 loads a day. They were able to run 2 running frames, and they were going to put it on rail because they could go 4 high instead of 3 high with the frames. It'd be more cost efficient. So we went and we spent, oh man, a lot of money. I want to say closer to $500,000 on 30 new drop deck dry van trailers so that we could go 4 high. And then we went up and modified one of their docks so that they could load from that height. And we kept the lane. And they paid us 10% more on it to do that.
That is pretty creative.
But they were able to, their customer was getting it on time a lot more than it was more reliable than the rail. They weren't set up yet. They were going to have to modify some stuff just to do that on the rail. And so, yeah, so we were able to do that. You know, my owner, that's something my owner does. He gets involved in that stuff. And we came up with the idea, and that's what I love about working here too, is you come up with the idea and they're like, hey, let's do it. Let's go up there. Let's talk to them. Sure enough, they did. So
I got a quick one. So as a shipper, we had a customer who was stamping plants for an automotive factory that had a some sort of clause for the supply chain for the shutdown, you know, the whole $100,000 an hour thing. And I was a part of this to a certain degree. I was still relatively new early in the career, and I wasn't fully and completely trusted to handle it. So they took somebody and brought him in, and we put a couple skids on an airplane, chartered a jet, and then we put the rest of it on a truck. And the truck had to be there by the time they ran out of the stuff that came off the plane in a team. So it was, I don't know, about 1,400 miles, origin to destination. And they called a plane in, booked it all, got it. Didn't involve me in this part, you know, it was just conceptual at the time. Spent all this money, flew a plane in from Detroit, chartered it, get a truck out to the airport. The doorway is not big enough to fit the skid in. You cannot put it on the plane. Well, now it's got to happen. So now we had to charter a second jet to come out with a wider door, because finally they measured the product, and I was like, hey, did anybody check the dims? And they measured the product, and suddenly, you know, 2 planes later, they got one that the stuff fit on. We go load the truck on at the dock. They sent the plane down there. The plane gets there at like 11 p.m. They run the stuff all night. You know, 24 hours later, the truck gets there and the rest of the load is there. And it ended up being like a month's budget for commercial freight spend for that one load to prevent the shutdown. It was insane. And we just didn't do our homework right. And we didn't involve the right people at the right time. And it was bumpier than it needed to be. But man, looking back, I'll never do that again. Because as soon as we did that, that's what they started asking for and expecting. Hey, how about another flight?
Oh yeah, those are in the expedite world, which we do a ton of. It's kind of our bread and butter. You don't want to talk. Nobody likes talking about flights. You buy a plane, especially as a broker. I mean, there was a time we did. It spent, I think, $14K. We had 3 pallets coming through Minnesota. I had to go to the Windsor plant, the Ford plant, which is like, you shut that down, it's like hundreds of thousands of dollars an hour. Shut it down. I mean, these are plant critical. You're paid a lot on expedites for a reason. It was snowy. Luckily, the carrier was great. He had 3 pallets in a Sprinter van. You know, snowy in hell. He was in a ditch. Nothing we could do. We had to fight. We had to get a plane, charter a plane in, put the 3 pallets on a plane. We paid $14K. It came out of our bonus checks for the next 6 months. But it was one of those things that happens. But that's why there's high risk, high reward on those things. But yeah, you don't ever want to talk about buying a plane when you in the expedite world, at least.
As the shipper, it was all high risk. There was no reward. The reward was not paying for the shutdown.
Yep.
I don't want anything to do with that. I think the most creative solution I was running some team shipments in and out cross country, very, very tight window from pick to delivery to make sure that the product got there essentially to prevent a shutdown. So teams coming in and out, and they're essentially round tripping teams in and out of the shipper, back to a receiver, going back and forth. Well, there were delays on the loading end consistently that delayed the team inbound. So then the outbound shipment was late. And so you're just getting backed up because it's the same truck. And what I had to do was call every local carrier in the area, convince them to allow us to rent a trailer. They sent a local to live load the load that the team was supposed to pick up in the morning, take it to their yard, drop it. The team came in with the load, unloads it, goes to their yard, picks it up and goes. Because it was a matter of like 2 hours, but that 2 hours put the team behind for the rest of the week's schedule. So we didn't need an extra truck. We just needed that first segment of it to work out. And I mean, there's a way to figure anything out. And I was like, wait, you could do this? And it ended up working out really well. Really nice local carrier, picked it up every day, dropped it in their yard. our guys picked it up, got out of there, and there wasn't a need for us to augment it, but there's a way to figure just about anything out.
And they probably loved it too, because it was
Loved it.
cheap and easy and flexible bonus for the end of the day stuff.
Loved it. They got paid a couple extra $100 to like they had the load for 2 hours.
We did that. I did that once with a lane where the shipper was busier than hell. I had to push this product, had to push it, but the receiver was just harder than hell to deal with. Right? They had unload at weird times. It wasn't really their fault. It was just like how they were set up. So I found a local cross dock guy at a cross dock down there in the city where the receiver is. He's right down the road from it. Started looking around, talking and talked with him, and he's like, "Oh, business is kind of slow. It's sporadic. It's here and there." I'm like, "Hey, do you want to not worry about business anymore?" He's like, "What do you mean?" I'm like, "Well, you've got 3 day cabs. He's got 3 day cabs, right? And he's got 3 of his own trailers. Okay. And he's got a cross dock. I'm like, I'm going to run my guys in. They're going to unload at your cross dock. Okay. And then they're going to turn and burn. All right. And then when that receiver can take it, you're going to take it over on your day cab down the road and deliver it for us. Okay. So we're only going to deliver to you. You're going to be the one delivering every one of these loads. Right. He was literally like not even a quarter mile down the road. So he got to know the people down at the receiver too. Right. So they're going to breakfast together. He's bringing them this and that and everything, because this was his whole business now. It was me just running in, just unload at his place every single time. He had 4 docks, and he was like, I'm thinking about adding on, maybe put another dock or 2. I'm like, I don't know how long I'm gonna have this lane, like easy. But I told him though, I mean, like, this is something you could do. This receiver's not going anywhere. Like whether I have this freight later on or whoever does, like, these are things you can do. And that some of these cross-docks know that, like, you find some good ones. Some of the big ones that make money, they're sitting over by the Walmart DCs. They're sitting over by the CVS DCs, where if you miss your appointment, you don't get another one for 4 months, those types of things. So, but yeah, it worked out well for him and for us and for the customer, because they knew what was going on. You gotta be transparent. Like, they knew I was breaking the seal. That's just part of it. But I had him sign not a trailer interchange agreement, but like a freight interchange agreement, in which he's saying, hey, when I take this on, I'm liable for X amount. Did cost as much of insurance because he was under a certain amount of mileage of transporting the freight. And it was also something where if they needed that freight like ASAP, they could go and get it themselves or have him call him on his cell phone. So like, it was like a whole thing coordinated between all 3 that ended up working out pretty well. But
very cool. Hey, we're getting to the point where in the show where we got to wrap it up.
Oh, there's Tony. Thanks, Tony.
I'll chime in on that.
Yeah, everybody. Tony doesn't want to be on the show anymore. We're looking for replacements. Go ahead and email me at darnelldoesdogs@.com. That was our thing last night. Did you see that? The hot dogs. Oh shit, that did sound bad, didn't it? I didn't mean it that way. Darnell does dogs as in hot dogs. Did you see Sarah's post?
I'm so concerned.
Apparently not.
You didn't see it? Okay, then it's not going to make sense. But
no,
it was about hot dogs and being a hot dog connoisseur, and that you knew a ton of don't know. Okay, but anyways, still go to that website and hit him up, because we're looking for a replacement. But I think we made it through today with no internet breaks, did we?
Oh, I had a couple. I just didn't tell anybody. If I hold still when I'm bugging out, it doesn't show up.
Elkhart people, man, they know all the tricks.
I got nothing in Elkhart.
Every time he hates it.
Will, it's been a pleasure, TJ.
Hey guys, take it easy. Listen, take what you learned today. Don't do exactly what we told you. We were giving examples, guidelines, things like that. Get creative, right? Getting creative is coming up with it yourself. So get creative. Figure it out. You've got resources. You've got people you can reach out to, whether it's in your company, online, whatever it is, friends. Start talking to shippers. I tell you, Tony Darnell, I learned a ton just from talking to him. Not only from what he does, but like from what he's done before. He's worked at multiple places. He's got buddies that he knows plants down the road. They'll give you some stuff where you're like, oh shit, I didn't think that they'd be cool with that, or that may work. So never be afraid to use that stuff, because if you're in the learning process, you're in the learning process. Just absorb it. And I always am too. So no matter how much Will, you got to think you got to do a different type of freight. I mean, we've always been spot bid heavy, expedite heavy. You guys have always been kind of contracted lane, right?
A little bit of both, but it's certainly, there's always something new. I learn something new every day, every single day.
That's what we've learned, especially during COVID, bringing some of these people in from Chicago, some of these brokers in. that are like their book of business is carriers. Like what? You know, like we were all about landing accounts, man. That's our book of business. You know what I mean? Like we're spot bid. Like we got to find carriers that are here to, like, their book of business is carriers. Like they take their carriers out to dinner. They do all this. It was like a huge culture change for us. It was like, wow, you know, like, but that's what made him such a good broker. I mean, like that's what it was. It wasn't just about what you could do with your customer. It was the same thing with the carriers. And so, you know, you learn those things. There's different worlds out there, you know, that you got to get out of your bubble, I guess you'd say, of what made you successful. So that's what this show's all about.
I will catch y'all next week.